What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they are 2 days away from the first appearance of a new offensive coordinator, maybe a new day and age for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. We got to talk to Eddie Faulkner yesterday for the first time since taking over, replacing the fired Matt Canada. He had plenty to say about his plans to change the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, how he's going to add some juice and hopefully bring some light to a struggling group. Meanwhile, there's an inside linebacker that is on the free agency market officially that the Pittsburgh Steelers maybe should consider going out and trying to sign. They have odds-on favorites to do so. We'll dive into that. And then, as always, our keys to victory for Week 12 as the Pittsburgh Steelers prepare for the Cincinnati Bengals, a Joe Burrow-less Cincinnati Bengals. It is a beautiful post-Thanksgiving day here in the city of Pittsburgh. I hope everybody's Thanksgiving was great and filled with plenty of great food and some good football. How are you feeling, my friend?
I feel good. Yeah, still a little full from yesterday. My family, we eat generally pretty late, so that stuff stays in you well into the next day. It doesn't pass easily. So I'm still dealing with the residual effects of my meal yesterday.
What's late? What time you guys eat?
I feel like everyone eats around like 3 on Thanksgiving, but we eat like traditional dinner hour. Like I think we ate at 7 or something last night, 7:30.
7's late. Yeah, you really have no time to digest. Do you go seconds? You got time for seconds at a 7 o'clock dinner?
No, not really. We just go straight into dessert, really. And then we save all the leftovers for the next day. So.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's not. We eat around like 5. I feel like typical, like 3 to 5 is like normal time. Yeah, get to digest. Go plate number 2 as you're like trying to like. I was like, you caught me yesterday, like laying on the couch, like just a to-go container of food on my chest, and I was just like eating like this. It was a great time, and then you go straight dessert for the next day. But that sounds pretty like a pretty great time for everybody who didn't see. Mike Tomlin held some Georgia Bulldogs, and pretty much everybody else at his house. I can only imagine. How many turkeys do you think you need to feed half a football team if you're Mike Tomlin?
Oh my God! So we had one for 5 people at my house last night. If you're feeding what, like 25 NFL
25 300-pound men, yeah.
You got to have 10, like at least, right? Like that seems conservative, right? Like,
yeah, no, it's an entire. I'm sure Mike Tomlin's kitchen is ginormous, but I would imagine that it's just a counter full of turkeys and then another counter full of just sides that are all gone. I would not imagine there's much food like chilling afterwards when like Isaac Seumalo and James Daniels or whoever else, like Broderick Jones, comes stumbling in. Darnell Washington's like 3 humans in one.
Right, and they're definitely taking some home. They're not 100%. Leaving anything. They're not leaving anything there.
No, could you imagine if they did? Could you imagine if you just like went to clean up afterwards and you were just like, all right, well, we fed 25 NFL players and they left us with 4 full turkeys and the entire plate of mac and cheese. Yeah, I could only imagine. But shout out to the Tomlins because, I'm sure that's a day of cooking. It's a good day of cooking. What's your before we dive into some football here? What's your favorite Thanksgiving meal side? What you going with here?
That's a good question. It's probably gotta be mashed potatoes. Honestly, I feel like I don't eat mashed potatoes very often, and so when I do get them like homemade too. Oh, they're beautiful. Loads of butter up in them. You mix them up. Ooh, yeah, that's my favorite. Mashed potatoes, probably.
Mashed potatoes do slap. I just discovered this out in, my fiance's family cooks, and they do like a cornbread casserole. Oh, yeah. Okay. Unreal. Never heard of it, but it is I literally sit there afterwards with just a plate of this and just go ham. It's good stuff. Mashed potatoes was always number 1 for me. That's just like, that's the classic go-to with some turkey, some gravy, and some butter. I feel you. All right, let's dive into some Pittsburgh Steelers football. Eddie Faulkner talked for the first time yesterday, introducing himself as the interim offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Had plenty to say, about what his expectations are, how he plans to utilize this offense and find some tweaks to make improvements. Started off by, kind of giving a little shout out to Matt Canada and saying that he and everybody else on the offensive staff kind of feels like they let him down shared his love for the guy and how, he's friends, their wives are friends, everybody hopes the best for him. I thought that was a great way to start things off. And then he dove into how he plans to actually change things. He had two really good quotes about, what he does plan to change. This is the first one. Quote, "I'm a real detailed guy. That's how I operate. That's how I have to operate. And that's how I operate in the running back room. So that's how I'm going to operate anything that has to do with the offense or with our staff to make sure we're squeezing down, we're tightening it up, we're closing all the spaces so we go into a game and these guys can execute and play fast. That's the focus." Then a little bit later, he goes, "I feel like if you get around a bunch of different, good, capable men, you empower them to do their job. And we got a bunch of really good coaches all across the board. We got guys in our auxiliary staff and our offense who have been coordinators for a long time. Why wouldn't you use all of those resources? So that's what I'm going to do." So I told the guys that's what we're going to do. And I talked to them about communicating with each other. It all comes back down to communicating. How can we funnel our energy to communicate with each other to produce a better product? That's it. And that's where my main focus is going to be, to make sure we're in lockstep and guys are coordinated that way. He pretty much said that there are no wholesale changes that anybody can make at this point in the season. You can't implement a new offense in week 12. I think we kind of expected that, understood that, but said that it's going to take a team. He's not really looking at this as he's the offensive coordinator and you follow his instructions and he has the best plan ever. He's kind of looking at it like, we have a pretty good offensive staff. It's time to utilize every resource we possibly have, and the offensive players included, and try to get something going. Is that enough? Do you look at this and say, obviously you can't make wholesale changes, but to just come together, is that as good of an answer for you, at least, for how Faulkner could kind of fix this offense?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have to be enough. I mean, this is what they've got. This is what they're working with at this point. So it's going to have to be enough through the end of the season. I do appreciate this kind of approach from Eddie. I mean, he's walking into I would say, a pretty difficult situation. This is kind of a first time move for him. So I think relying on, the rest of his staff is a good move, relying on guys who have been there. Eddie, for as much as he works with the entire offensive staff, maybe coming up with a game plan, like, he doesn't have a hand in, every position group like he's probably going to now, so he's going to have to kind of gather some knowledge about what everyone else on this team has been doing over the past, 12 weeks, 2 years, whatever, to help kind of catch him up to speed with where they are, what they like, what they're good at and everything like that. So he's got a little bit of learning to do, especially this week, just about, what he's got to work with and what he needs to emphasize, what he needs to kind of protect against. So I think this is a great move to kind of say, look, this is a collaboration. Like, we need everyone. When you lose someone, especially someone kind of at the top of the food chain, just in terms of the offensive coaching staff, you feel like it's logical to say, we need everyone. We need everyone in on this, trying to help us work and replace this guy.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that you could. I think a lot of guys come in here, and I think, to some degree, maybe that was Canada's issue, is that it's hard to say, hey, look, we got to adjust some things. How do we do so? Who do we talk to figure out, hey, this is a gap. This isn't working all the way. How do we fix this? Instead, a lot of guys go into a position, especially a position of power like that, and just say, I have this game plan. This game plan is going to work. If it doesn't work, we continue to hammer it and things will be fine. I mean, Canada said that every single week. It was, we're just going to continue to do what we're doing and eventually it'll work. And it never seemed to work. So I like that. I like how he mentioned 2 or 3 times during this press conference that at the end of the day, it's just about going into a week with a game plan, adjusting in game as much as we can, and then coming out of it, going back to the lab and saying, okay, what do we have to tweak to make this better next week? And I think that's huge. Like, that's all you could do, is you could take the product that you have and say, what can we do initially to make it better? And then what can we do week after week after seeing it on the field to make it as fine-tuned of a product as we can get by the postseason? I think that that's like the best approach, is to say it's not going to get fixed this week. It's probably not going to get fixed next week. Anybody who's sitting around thinking this offense is going to be a 600-yard offense, right away, not going to happen. But if you could get it to a place where you're winning and fight your way into the postseason, and then it's a good enough product in the postseason, you've given yourself almost a double chance. You've improved your odds by 50% to win a game in the playoffs compared to what they were. Because, you looked at it a week ago and we'd sit around saying, yeah, they could get there, but they're not going to do well once they get into the dance. Now it's just about coming up with a formula by the time you get into the postseason where it works. And I feel like that's all you can do when it comes to the offense. I mean, do you expect changes in game plan? Like you can't change the scheme, you can't change the plays, but do you expect like a change in, all right, the Steelers are a running football team, they have a running back coach, this is a Najee Harris, Jalen Warren football team here on out, or do you kind of expect it to still try to be we got to get Kenny going, we got to, have a 1-2 punch at running back? Do you expect anything different along those lines?
Yeah, I kind of do. I mean, I think they put a lot on Kenny's plate through the first, I guess, half of the season or whatever, and I don't think that's going to be the case really anymore. I feel like Eddie and Mike Sullivan are going to kind of lean on what they know and what they're really comfortable with, and I feel like right now that's the running game. Well, Kenny's been a little bit of a question mark through most of the season, so I kind of expect them to, at least initially, at least against Cincinnati this week, really rely on, especially Jalen. I mean, Jalen only had 9 carries last week, like that. I don't think that's going to be the case again this week. So I think they're really going to lean heavily on Jalen. They'll lean heavily on Najee, and they will try to not throw as little as possible, but I think like just try to keep things simple for Kenny as he goes through this transition as well, because I feel like it's a big thing for him too, like losing your offensive coordinator, the only one that you've had in the NFL, like this creates a bit of a rocky situation for him. So I feel like the more that you can take something off of his plate and, lean on your running backs who've been playing really well, your offensive line who's been pretty good recently, save for maybe against Cleveland. I don't think they were great there, but like that's the stuff that's been working. So I feel like I would really expect them to lean on that and just lean on what's comfortable right now, and that's the run game.
Yeah, I agree. I looked at it throughout the season and I just kind of thought, and I think I wasn't alone on this thought, like Canada knows that if Kenny works, his job is saved, and he was trying so hard to save his job. And I get it. Like, I understand that train of thought, but Faulkner's got nothing. He's got nothing to lose here. Kenny could stink. And at the end of the season, if the Pittsburgh Steelers offense is phenomenal at the end of the year because Eddie Faulkner's the dude and turns this around, and Kenny Pickett is still not good, the Pittsburgh Steelers won't sit around and go, well, it's Eddie Faulkner's fault. That's, they'll come to a realization that, maybe Kenny isn't the guy. And I think that's the territory that they're in right now. And Eddie understands that his sole purpose is to just win, hey, it doesn't matter how it works. We just got to win. Just like you said, Jalen Warren is probably their best bet to have success on offense. Najee Harris is probably their second best bet, but also like dumb little passes. Just ways to get the ball into George Pickens and Deontay Johnson and Pat Fryermuth's hands without having almost any pressure on Kenny Pickett. I don't know how you make that happen, but that is, in my eyes, like that's the philosophy moving forward. That's what I would expect to happen moving forward, is just like, how could we make this as simple as possible, not put any stock in our quarterback, and just say, let the rest of it work? Because the rest of the Steelers offense is pretty good. Like, the offensive line struggled against Cleveland, but I would expect most offensive lines struggle against Cleveland. And the running game's phenomenal. You have 2 star wide receivers. You have a good tight end. You have some good backup tight ends. You got playmakers. Like, you can make things work. So I agree. I look at it and just say, like, if I was going into this game, if you ask me my expectations or what I anticipate the offense to look like, I would anticipate Jalen Warren touching the football like 15 to 20 times, and then Najee touching it probably like 10 to 15 times, and then Kenny throwing the football like maybe 15 times. And they're all like easy little completions to George and Deontay and to Pat and everybody else. But I would expect this to be like such a run-heavy game. It's crazy, which is what the Pittsburgh Steelers should do. Like, offenses succeed that way, and they should try to succeed that way, and don't do anything crazy. But I think that is the way to go. Do you expect some, he kind of talked and he said this, he said that on game day, he's pretty much going to stay out of Mike Sullivan's ear. Like it's, he's going to call the plays. He understands how difficult that is. He's going to let that rock. Do you expect that to maybe like cause some confusion or maybe some hiccups, or do you think it's going to flow fine? Like, can you have an offensive coordinator Monday through Friday and then on Sunday just hand the reins to a guy and say, all right, here's the game plan. Go call it. I'll just be chilling.
I think so. Honestly, I think that's better than the alternative. Like, I think on game day, you need smoother operation. You need, I don't know, less, like, fewer cooks in the kitchen. Like, having, to have a play caller on the sideline and then someone in his ear going like, well, I think you should call this. And then I think you should call this. Well, that wasn't a very good call. Like, or I wouldn't have done that. Like, I think you need to have kind of one voice speaking during game day, whereas in practice, it's maybe easier to have multiple guys giving input and multiple guys, there to work things out. Game day is a completely different animal where I think having too many guys communicating could be troublesome, and I'm sure they'll like go in at halftime and chat with each other and like, have a conversation about what they need to do. But I think while they're actually on the field and while Mike's actually calling plays, it's probably best just to have one voice speaking from that area,
Yeah. I kind of agree. Like, it's you only got 25 seconds. You got to make things happen fast. You got to communicate quick. Like, I would imagine that there's like I would imagine the script is much longer than typical or than normal. And I would imagine at the end of every quarter, or maybe the end of every drive, like Faulkner's in there. They're talking about what's next instead of one guy standing. Like, it was Matt Canada, like 15 yards behind everybody, just like going through it by himself. I would imagine those two get together and say, these are the adjustments we got to make. Let's do this. I also think that what's good about that is Sullivan, Sullivan allows it to flow without, added pressure. It's like, I'm not the OC. I'm just calling the plays, like I'm just in here following the game plan, and Faulkner's come up with this game plan. And I think that takes a lot of pressure off of the guy calling plays, which I think helps. Like, I think the best thing for the Pittsburgh Steelers is to just go back to like what I said before, remove any expectation, remove any, I don't know, like any notion that you have to do this or you have to do that. It should just be, just go out there and call a game and try to win it. And I think that Sullivan has literally nothing relying on. Like, Sullivan's not losing his job if he's not the greatest play caller in the world these last 7 games. He's still the quarterback's coach next season. Faulkner's still the running backs coach next season. And if they could just, take as much pressure away from those two as possible, I agree. I think that's the best case scenario for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I got to say, Faulkner brought a ton of juice to this press conference. I was pretty hyped about it. If you haven't checked it out, you can find it on YouTube. You can find it pretty much anywhere that you just type in Eddie Faulkner. I'm a big Eddie Faulkner guy, been a big Eddie Faulkner guy. Like, this dude, just everywhere you go, he's got a smile on his face and he's kind of yelling and making jokes. And that's the type of energy the Pittsburgh Steelers need. So if I was a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I'd be rather excited for at least just the energy component of what Faulkner could bring to this team. All right, let's transition into the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Guys, we have gear, new merchandise from AST to Muth, Bleed Black and Gold, Kenny to George, and plenty of others now at our new website, blackandgoldapparel.com. And the coolest part, 50% of all profits at our store go to UPMC Children's Hospital here in Pittsburgh to make sure that we are giving back. We can't thank you guys enough, and we want to show you guys how thankful and how grateful we are for everything by making sure that we do our part to make the community here in Pittsburgh better. Go check out everything. We tried to make everything new and improved, from our designs to our quality of sweatshirts and t-shirts and everything else. Let us know and check everything out at blackandgoldapparel.com. And as always, thank you guys for everything. There is a name floating around in free agency the last 2 days. That name is Shaquille Leonard. He was released by the Indianapolis Colts, passed through waivers. He's now officially a free agent. The Pittsburgh Steelers and the Philadelphia Eagles, according to betkentucky.com. I don't know how often everybody visits betkentucky.com, but they are the odds-on favorite to land Shaq Leonard, 4-time All-Pro, first 4 years in the league, former defensive player or defensive rookie of the year, had 2 back surgeries last year. This year he started all 9 games. He's got 60-plus tackles, but just isn't doing what the Colts have wanted him to do since coming back from those surgeries. They decide to waive him, go in a different direction. I mean, the Steelers need an inside linebacker. They have brought in everybody and anybody that they possibly can this week. They signed Blake Martinez off the Panthers practice squad. they added Miles Jack, who did you I don't know if you caught this week. I barely caught it. Miles Jack was a pilot before he was showing up here and helping out with a hockey team in Jacksonville. And then he got the phone call and he was like, yeah, you know what? I'll go play football again.
Yeah, he said he was like working with the minor league hockey team. I think he might have said that he owned it. Like
he owns it. He's got ownership in it. I don't know how much, but he's got some ownership in it.
Yeah, I would have never. I mean, I can't say I know that much about Miles Jack as a person, but I would have never guessed, minor league hockey enthusiast. That didn't ever cross my mind. The
guy's got everything. He could be a plumber, an electrician. He could fly you places, and he could probably talk some hockey if you need him to talk some hockey. Miles Jack, man, Jack of all trades. Pun intended. But he's here. He's with he's with the practice squad, according to Diana Rossini, I believe, maybe Josina Anderson. I don't remember who reported it. That the Steelers have an expectation that once he's in football shape, he will join the 53-man roster. So they're trying as hard as possible to add some veterans and fill the gap left from Quan Alexander and Cole Holcomb. Do they continue to do it? Can they? Should they add Shaq Leonard for the end of the season? With the expectation that it's an affordable deal for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Right, yeah. I think as long as it's affordable, as long as it's not a ridiculous contract, I think this is kind of a no-brainer. I mean, getting someone with experience in there, a guy who has been able to cover at some point in his career. I mean, like you said, on a reasonable contract, I mean, this is a guy who has a pretty versatile skill set. I know he's not making the kind of splash plays this year as he has at other points in his career, but there's still some talent there, I'd have to believe. He still at least seems reliable, if he's not making, tons of big splash plays, he's at least, making a ton of tackles. Seems like he's in the right spot most of the time. So I think this would be a good move. I mean, the Steelers are in no position to be shooing away linebackers, especially ones that have this kind of pedigree and this kind of talent. So why not? I mean, it certainly can't hurt you, right? Like I mean, like you said, with the qualifier that it's a decent contract, there's kind of no downside to adding a guy like this because the Steelers really don't have a downside to adding anyone at this point.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Like Blake Martinez and Miles Jack do not move the needle for me. If you want to bring in another guy, like what's the difference? If Shaq Leonard doesn't work out and the guy is on a downward hill and his career, his all-pro career only lasted 4 seasons, that stinks. I hope that that's not the case for him. But who cares? Like, what is the difference between bringing in Miles Jack off of, hanging out in the bleachers of a minor league hockey game or Blake Martinez off the practice squad of the worst team in the NFL? I just don't see the difference. Like Shaq Leonard is a guy who's got some upside. Maybe he works out, maybe he doesn't, but that's how the Steelers have formulated this inside linebacker room. They signed a Landon Roberts who was never like the biggest name anywhere he was, and he seemingly worked out. Quan Alexander was definitely a risk. This guy has been through injuries before. He's at one point was, a star inside linebacker, has since kind of became a question mark. He worked out for them, and Cole Holcomb was the same way, like coming off a massive injury. Nobody knew what was going to happen. They sign him and he works out. Like, why not do it again with Shaq Leonard? And I think it'd be easy for them. Like, if the Philadelphia Eagles call, I mean, that's tough to turn down. But it's not like the Pittsburgh Steelers are sitting around a team that's out of the playoff race. Like, there's no reason to come to Pittsburgh. I think anybody who would want to play for Mike Tomlin, who I don't know if you saw the Athletics poll the other day, that Tomlin is still the coach most guys in the NFL want to, although I think they interviewed they tallied like 72 players or something. I was like, that's like a quarter of the NFL. But he's still the guy that, coaches or that players want to play for the most. Like, Tomlin calls you and says, hey, look, we're 6-4. We're making a playoff push. This is a great defense. We need you right now. I don't see how he doesn't want to come to Pittsburgh outside of Philly. Like Philly's Philly.
Yeah, Philly's tough, but I don't know. This is still a team in playoff position. I don't know. It's not. I guess it is a pretty big difference, but I don't think it's as big.
Yeah.
And he would get a chance to play right away. Like this would. I don't know. It seems like. I don't know what the Eagles' linebacker depth chart looks like, but I feel like he could have kind of a bigger impact in Pittsburgh maybe than in Philly.
Yeah, and he's working with guys like Landon Roberts is a solid inside linebacker. The defense as a whole, I mean, like you get to come in and you get to play with TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Patrick Peterson, and Minka Fitzpatrick. Like those are some decent names to be like, all right, yeah, we'll add me to the list. Like that sounds good. I feel like, and then again, like the Mike Tomlin factor is always there. I feel like if Mike Tomlin calls you, it's different than if most coaches call you, and say like, hey, you want to come play for me? Like Mike Tomlin calls you like, oh, damn, okay, I'm listening, So I think it makes sense for both sides. If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, you certainly call. Like there's no way you just let him chill and say, like, bare minimum, you're getting a price tag. You're saying, hey, what are you looking for? What kind of contract are you offering? Or are you looking to get offered? This is what we're looking at. I'd say like maybe a 1-year deal, see what happens. And then in the offseason, if it works out, you sign him to a longer extension. I mean, I think it makes a ton of sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll see what happens, but it's certainly yes. Like it's probably the easiest yes they could come across right now outside of like, if like Jalen Ramsey hit the market and they're like, oh, damn, should we sign a corner? Yeah, probably. The answer is most certainly yes. Yeah, Shaq Leonard makes a lot of sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, we'll see what happens. I would expect a move, if not this weekend, like some news to like pop up where it's like, oh, he expects to sign here. I would not rule the Pittsburgh Steelers out even with the moves of Miles Jack and Blake Martinez. All right, last thing we want to talk about before we head out here. It's week 12. The Pittsburgh Steelers are traveling to Cincinnati, taking on the Bengals, a Joe Burrow-less Bengals, a massive game for the Steelers' shot at the AFC North and really for their playoff hopes as a whole. It's Jake Browning. It is a banged-up defense for the Cincinnati Bengals. You look at the Pittsburgh Steelers' new offensive coordinator, Eddie Faulkner, is going to lead everybody out there. What is your key to victory for this Week 12 matchup?
Well, I think it's something that we kind of touched on earlier, and it's lean on what's comfortable, lean on what you're good at in the offense, and that's running the football. I mean, the Bengals, and I did not know this before I looked it up, but they are the 31st ranked rushing defense, like as far as yards allowed in the NFL. Like I wouldn't have guessed that. I thought they had a ton of talent there that would have been able to shore that up, but you're good at running the football. The Bengals aren't good at stopping it. Seems like a pretty simple formula there. Doesn't take a genius to figure that out. So just lean on Jalen Warren. He's hot. He has to get more than 9 carries, man. And I think he only got like 3 receptions, maybe if that many, against Cleveland. Like he's got to touch the ball more. He's just got to. Like there's no two ways about it. So feed Jalen Warren. Let Najee finish off some hard runs. Like that's something it's not like you have to take him completely out of the game plan either. But run the ball. Exploit this team for exploit what your opponent doesn't do well and just capitalize on what you do well and make everything comfortable for everyone as they go through this transition with Matt Canada going out and Eddie Faulkner coming in. Just keep it simple, run the football, come out with a win.
Yep. And one of those passes for Jalen Warren was that screen that didn't have any chance. So really it was 2. It was 2 it was 2 receptions there. Yeah, I agree. Like just to add on to that, I think for the Pittsburgh Steelers to be successful on offense, it's just take this out of Kenny Pickett's hands. Don't make this a fourth quarter game that Kenny's got to win. Try to put it away early and just gain momentum. Like control the clock. Control the clock as an offense. Everybody talks about, a quarterback has to be a game manager. Your offense as a whole could be a game manager. You could control the clock by running the football and throwing shorter passes and just working the sticks the first 3 quarters of the game and trying to build a lead while you're doing so, and then allow the Steelers defense to do what it does best, and that's to just hold teams to under 20 points. Like if you could go out and score, it doesn't have to be a score fast, but if you could score early in the game, and then you could score again on your second drive, and that takes up a decent chunk of clock there, you got 14 points on the board, and the defense is just expected to keep a team under 2 touchdowns. Like that's so realistic for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it has been so impossible to do to this point because they're just trying so many crazy things to try and get points on the board and work fast and do this and do that. Just do what you do best, and that's run the football, just like you said. Give it to Jalen Warren as much as you possibly can. Allow Najee Harris to help out as well as that 1-2 punch. Take the game out of Kenny Pickett's hands. Don't even put it in them. Just tell them, hey, you're part of this offense. Your job is to get the ball into George Pickens and Deontay Johnson's hands. It's not to win this football game. It's not to manage the clock. It is just to go out there and throw a football where we tell you to throw a football. Allow everybody else to do their job and to do it well. And I think that you give yourself a good shot. Like, even if you don't put up 30 points, I still think you give yourself a really good opportunity to walk away from this game with 3 touchdowns and a victory. And that's all you're looking for, Like, Patrick Peterson was on his podcast. I caught this the other day on Twitter, and Brian McFadden said something like, if you guys score over 20 points, and Pat P was like, oh man, 20 points, that would be great. And I was just like, it's all they need. Like, that's all that everybody on defense knows, that the Steelers offense just needs to score 20 points and they'll be fine. They don't have to do that in their first 3 drives. They just have to do it throughout the ball game and take as much time off the clock as possible to make things, like if you give Jake Browning minimal time to win this football game, the Bengals' odds of winning go drastically down. So I think that's it. Manage the clock as an offense, not as a quarterback. And like you said, give the ball to the guys that are working. That starts with Jaylen Warren. All right, we were real off last week. Although Nick had the score right, it was just backwards. 13-10. He had Steelers. It was it shouldn't have been that sloppy, but it was. Cincinnati's a whole other animal. They're dealing with some injuries, just like you said. Their run defense is a little beat up, and it's not looking the greatest. Joe Burrow's out, but a rookie quarterback last week couldn't help the Pittsburgh Steelers. So maybe it does this week. Who knows? New offensive coordinator. I mean, you got a score prediction for Week 12: Pittsburgh Steelers, Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, I'm picking a Steelers win again. 20-16. I think Jake Browning will have enough weapons to like get within field goal range a few times. Maybe they score a touchdown. Like, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are just too good. Like, you can throw it up to them and they'll make plays. But I also think the Steelers are going to be able to exploit the fact that they can run the ball, and they're going to score a couple touchdowns. They're going to have a more productive day offensively. We're going to walk away feeling pretty good about the direction of the offense, and the Steelers the win, and they get back to their winning ways, and they're right back into the thick of the playoff hunt.
20-16. I kind of like that. Like, 20 points is a good, not blowing the roof off with this new offense.
Ambitious. It
20
would be,
points is very ambitious for the Steelers offense.
If they walked away with 20 points, I feel like we'd all be real happy. We'd all think that, like, this is the answer. Eddie Faulkner is the guy. This is what they should do forever. Yeah,
I look at it. You're not wrong. If they score 20 points, that is a W for the offense. No matter how they put it on the board, that's a W for the offense. I'm gonna go a little crazier here. Okay, I'm gonna go 24, because I'm saying they score 3 touchdowns in this one.
Wow, yeah. 3 American touchdowns. Wow,
3 American touchdowns on this Sunday for the Pittsburgh Steelers. 3 touchdowns, and then Chris Boswell kicks field, because he can't. There's part of me that, Chris Boswell's on my fantasy team, so I need him to score at least 1 field goal in this game, but Boswell's always good for 1. So I'm saying 24 to, I like the 16, 24-16. This is a win for the Steelers. It's not like, I don't think this is like a big blowout. Like, I don't think this is anything crazy. I think it's simply the Steelers run the football and their running backs or whoever else find the end zone 3 times. And that's like, that's it. Like, they just found momentum and they kept that momentum. They didn't do anything stupid to screw it up like they've done in the past. And they just build off of it and they let it rock. Because we've yet to see what a Steelers offense does when Jaylen Warren starts bursting out 76-yard runs and then you continue to give the ball to Jaylen Warren. Like, we haven't seen that one time this season. I would expect that to happen this week. I'm going 24-16. That seems super crazy ambitious, but this is the new OC game. So I'm feeling good about it. Pittsburgh Steelers win. We'll see what happens. Let's hope for a just like they say, the new OC game is always a good one for the team that just fired their coach. I don't think there's going to be cigars like there was in Vegas, but I would expect a little bit of added juice in this one. We'll see what happens. The Pittsburgh Steelers take on the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday, a huge matchup for the AFC North and the Pittsburgh Steelers playoff odds as a whole. Me and Steven got wins. We'll see what happens. For everybody else, we're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Find us anywhere you get your podcast and check out all of our work at allsteelers.com and our pit coverage at InsideThePanthers.com. We will be back on Monday. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.